The morning I found out, I was standing in my kitchen in a bathrobe, holding a mug of coffee that had already gone cold, staring at my phone screen like it was written in a language I'd never learned. Our joint savings account, the one we'd been building together for 11 years, showed a balance of $23.14. Not $23,000, not $2,300, $23.14. I remember the specific sound the mug made when I set it down on the granite. A small, quiet click, like something ending. Let me back up, because you need to understand what I thought I had before you can understand what was taken from me. My name is Claire. I was 41 years old when my marriage finally showed me its real face. I had been with my husband Daniel since I was 29. We met at a mutual friend's dinner party in October, and I remember thinking he was the kind of man who made a room feel warmer just by walking into it. He was funny, he was attentive. On our third date, he remembered that I'd mentioned once, offhandedly, that my favorite flowers were ranunculus. Not roses, not lilies, ranunculus. And he showed up at my door with a whole bouquet of them. I thought, this man pays attention. This man is different. We got married 3 years later at a small venue in the countryside. 40 guests, string lights. His grandmother danced with my father. It was the happiest day of my life, and I believed with my whole chest that I had chosen correctly. For the first 4 or 5 years, things were genuinely good. We bought a house together in a quiet suburb. We talked about having kids, decided to wait a little longer, travel first, build savings. I was working as a project manager at a mid-sized logistics firm, and Daniel was in commercial real estate, which, he was quick to remind anyone who'd listen, meant his income was unpredictable, but had enormous ceiling potential. So we agreed I would be the financial anchor. My salary was steady, my benefits were solid. And so, quietly, without ever making a formal arrangement of it, I became the one who paid the mortgage, the one who kept the health insurance, the one who funded the savings account we were supposed to be building together for our future. Daniel contributed when deals closed, which, looking back, happened less and less frequently as the years went on. But he always had an explanation. The market was soft. His broker license renewal had been expensive. He'd had to take a client to dinner several times. Always expensed, always necessary, always just a little more than expected. I never questioned it seriously because I trusted him. And because I was busy, working full-time, managing our home, keeping everything running while he pursued this career that was always just about to take off. I put $187,000 into that savings account over 11 years. Let that number sit with you for a second. $187,000. I know the exact figure because I went back through every transfer record after everything fell apart. I tracked every single deposit. Most of them came from me. And when I looked at my phone that morning and saw $23.14, I felt a cold, specific kind of dread. Not panic, not confusion. Something worse. A dread that felt almost like recognition. Like some quiet part of me had always been waiting for this. I called the bank before I called Daniel. The representative walked me through the withdrawal history for the last 18 months. I sat down on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, coffee going cold on the counter above me. In that 18-month window, there had been 43 separate withdrawals. Some were small, 300 here, 500 there. Some were enormous. A wire transfer of $22,000 in February. A cash withdrawal of $8,500 in late April. Another wire, $14,750, 6 months ago to an account I didn't recognize. All authorized, all made by Daniel, using his signatory rights on our joint account. Total withdrawn, $61,440. I stayed on that kitchen floor for a while, I'm not sure how long. The morning light moved across the tile and I just sat there, trying to understand what I was looking at. And then I made the worst mistake I could have made in that moment. I called him. "Hey, what's up?" he answered, casual as a man who had done nothing wrong. I kept my voice even. I told him I'd checked the account. I told him it showed $23.14. I asked him if he knew anything about that. There was a pause, just long enough to be a tell. And then he said, "Oh yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. I had some investment opportunities come up and the timing was sensitive. I didn't want to bother you with the details while you were stressed about the Henderson project at work." $61,000, I said. Silence. "Daniel, I talked to the bank. $61,000. Claire." His voice shifted, became careful and slightly irritated, the way it always did when he was about to manage me. "I worked for that money too. It's a joint account. I'm allowed to make financial decisions for our household." "I worked for that money too." He said that. Those words, in that order. "I worked for that money too." I hung up. And then I sat very still and I started thinking. Not with my heart, which was breaking, but with the cold, clear part of my brain that I had spent 11 years suppressing in this marriage, because something about the phrasing felt rehearsed. Investment opportunities. Didn't want to bother you. I worked for it too. Those were the words of someone who had prepared for this conversation, someone who had been waiting for it. I called my closest friend Margot, who had always had better instincts about Daniel than I did, and had the good grace to mostly keep them to herself. I told her what I'd found. She went quiet in a way that told me she wasn't surprised. "Claire," she said carefully, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out before you say anything." What she told me rearranged the furniture of my entire life. She had seen Daniel 3 weeks earlier at the Whitmore Hotel downtown. She'd been there for a colleague's birthday dinner. She'd spotted him in the lobby, not at the restaurant, not at the bar, but at the elevator bank, holding a key card. And he wasn't alone. He was with a woman Margot had never seen before, young, maybe 26, 27. They were standing close together. He had his hand on the small of her back. Margot had texted me 3 times that night. I had been asleep by 9, exhausted from a week of back-to-back project calls. I'd seen the text the next morning and assumed they were just general check-ins and told myself I'd call her later. I never did. The text sat unread, marked as seen, filed into the background noise of a life I was too tired to examine closely. I asked Margot to send me the texts right then while we were on the phone. She did. They were time-stamped 10:48 p.m. on a Thursday. Daniel had told me that Thursday he was at a client dinner in the financial district. He'd been home by midnight, smelling like whiskey and something floral that I'd assumed was the restaurant. I had kissed him on the cheek and gone back to sleep. I sat with that for a moment, and then I went to his desk. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was running on adrenaline and something that felt like controlled fury, like anger that had found a track to run on. I went through his desk in the home office, the one I never entered because it was his space, and I had always respected that, had always been so careful about boundaries in this marriage, so careful not to crowd him or pressure him or make him feel watched. I found the credit card in 40 minutes. It was in an unmarked envelope in the bottom drawer of his filing cabinet, underneath a folder labeled Vehicle Maintenance. A credit card in his name only, with a bank I didn't recognize. I photographed the card. I wrote down the number, the expiration, the bank's name. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Then I called a lawyer. I want to stop here for a second because this is the part of the story that I am most proud of. Not the confrontation, not the courtroom, this part. The part where I made a decision that went against every instinct I had as a person who still loved him, who was still hoping there was an explanation, who still, God help me, wanted to be wrong about what was happening. I chose to wait. I called a family law attorney named Patricia, who had been recommended to me by a colleague who'd gone through a divorce 2 years earlier. I told her everything. The account withdrawals, the hotel, the secret credit card, the missing money. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she said, "Do not confront him again. Do not change the account. Do not move any money. Don't let him know you're building a case. Can you do that?" I said yes. And then I spent the next 6 weeks being the best actress of my life. I cooked dinner. I asked about his day. I folded his laundry. I slept next to him in our bed and I said nothing, felt everything, and let him believe he had gotten away with it. Meanwhile, Patricia's office was pulling financial records. We hired a forensic accountant who traced the withdrawals through 2 intermediary accounts to a third-party account registered to a woman named Sienna, 26 years old, a fitness instructor who lived in a brand-new apartment building 12 minutes from our house that had been leased, I would later discover, with $4,800 of our money. The $22,000 wire had paid for a trip, Florence and the Amalfi Coast. 2 weeks in May, the same May I'd spent working 60-hour weeks to close the Henderson contract, calling Daniel every evening from my hotel room, asking how things were at home, listening to him say, "Everything's fine, don't stress, just focus on the deal." He had been in Italy, with her, on our money. The $14,750 was furniture, for her apartment. I have the receipt. By the time Patricia told me we were ready, I had documentation of $61,440 in marital assets transferred to fund his relationship with Sienna. We had texts recovered from a shared cloud backup, because Daniel, for all his careful management of me, had never thought to remove my access from our family plan. That included messages so explicit, so affectionate, so detailed about their shared future, that I had to read them in Patricia's office with a glass of water in my hand just to keep breathing. And in one message, sent on a Sunday morning while I was downstairs making us both breakfast, he had written to her, "She has no idea. She never will. She trusts me completely, and that's exactly why this works." I filed for divorce on a Tuesday. Daniel was served at his office building, in the lobby, in front of 2 colleagues and a client he had been trying to cultivate for months. I chose that location specifically, not out of cruelty, or maybe a little out of cruelty, but mostly because I knew if I served him at home, he would find a way to control the narrative before I could finish speaking. I wanted him to receive the papers in a context where he couldn't perform his way out of it immediately, where he would have to stand there in his good suit, in his professional life, and feel a fraction of the exposure I had felt sitting on my kitchen floor, staring at $23 in an account I had spent 11 years building. He called me 7 times in the 2 hours after he was served. I didn't answer once. He showed up at the house that evening, pale and rigid, and said, "You need to talk to me before this gets out of control." I let him in. I had my phone recording, as Patricia had advised. "This is insane," he said. "You're blowing this completely out of proportion. What she and I had is over. It meant nothing. I was going through something and I made bad choices, and you going nuclear like this is going to ruin both of our lives." "She and I had," I said. "Past tense, interesting." He stopped. "How long?" I asked. "And don't lie to me, I have the texts." The color left his face. 2 years, he said quietly. "A little over 2 years." I nodded. I had already known. I had just needed him to say it out loud on recording. "You spent $61,000 of our shared savings on her," I said. "I was going to pay it back. You told her I had no idea and that my trust was why it worked." He had no answer for that. "I want you to understand something," I said. "I'm not doing this because I'm hysterical or reactive or acting crazy, which I'm sure will be your version of events. I'm doing this because for 6 weeks I have sat in this house, made your dinners, and watched you lie to my face every single day. And in that time, I've built a case that Patricia describes as one of the cleaner dissipation of marital assets arguments she's seen in 15 years of practice. So, here we are." He left without another word. The divorce proceedings took 4 months. It was not pleasant. Daniel hired a lawyer who tried to argue that his withdrawals were legitimate investment decisions, which might have worked if we hadn't been able to produce the Amalfi Coast Hotel invoices, the apartment lease co-signed in his name, and 11 months of Venmo transactions from his secret account to hers. The forensic accountant's report was 47 pages long and itemized every dollar. The judge was not charmed by Daniel. I received the house, which had $290,000 in equity. I received 60% of remaining retirement assets. I received $61,440 in restitution for the dissipated marital funds, structured into a payment plan because Daniel, stripped of the illusion of his investment career, did not actually have that money liquid anymore. Sienna had moved on within 3 weeks of the divorce filing. She had not, it turned out, been especially interested in Daniel as a person. She had been interested in a man who paid for things. When that stopped, so did she. He called me 27 days after the divorce was finalized. I remember the number because I had been counting, waiting to see how long it would take. "The mortgage on the apartment came through," he said. He had been renting since I got the house. And my license renewal is due, and I have 2 other bills, and I'm a little short this month, and I was hoping we could talk about. I let him finish. I let the whole sentence land. And then I said, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm the right person to help with that. And I hung up. I want to tell you what my life looks like now, 14 months later, because I think that's the part of this story that matters most. Not the courtroom, not the documents, not even the look on his face when he realized I had known everything for 6 weeks and said nothing. The part that matters is what came after. I repainted the bedroom. I know that sounds small, but I had wanted to repaint that bedroom for 4 years, and Daniel always had a reason to delay it. The timing was wrong, we should save the money, it was fine the way it was. I repainted it a deep, warm terracotta, and I lie in it every morning in the quiet, and I feel like myself in a way I hadn't felt in years. I took a solo trip to Portugal in September, 11 days. I ate whatever I wanted, stayed out late, walked until my feet hurt, and didn't explain my schedule to anyone. I got a promotion, senior director. The Henderson contract I closed while my husband was in Italy with another woman on my money contributed directly to that promotion. There is a specific satisfaction in that fact that I return to sometimes when I need to remember my own strength. And the women at work, 2 of them have come to me quietly in the months since everything became known in my social circle and asked me how I did it, how I held it together, how I stayed quiet for 6 weeks, how I built the case instead of throwing the plates. I tell them the same thing every time. I tell them, he was so certain I would never stop trusting him that he stopped being careful. And the moment I stopped being the woman he had decided I was, naive, overworked, willing to believe anything he said, he had no idea what to do. Men like Daniel run on your faith in them. The moment you quietly withdraw that faith and start paying attention, they're already lost. I was 41 when I found out my husband had been living a second life on my money for 2 years. I am 42 now, and I have never, not for a single day, wished things had gone differently.